everybody, this is Awake Angel 2001, and while going to all of the targets that I have access to see if I could find the proper Movie Deluxe Air Razor or perhaps the Sonic Boom toys, I actually stumbled across Transformers Legacy Evolution Prowl. Specifically, this is a G1-ified version of animated Prowl, which is my Prowl. Now I know what you're thinking. Wake Angel 2001, aren't you a G1er? Well, the simple answer is no, I'm actually not. I was born in 1985. By the time I was actually old enough to watch and be invested in the cartoons, the G1 show was already on its way out. I barely caught a few of the syndicated reruns. When I was a little kid, the only G1 episode of Transformers that had an impact on me was The Girl Who Loved Power Glide. So, no, the original G1 Transformers cartoon was just a little bit before my time. So, I actually got really into Transformers in Beast Wars, which was a really great show. But I didn't collect any of the toys from it because I'm not sure if it's because my childhood sensibilities saw the toys and decided that they didn't look enough like the cartoon to satisfy me, or maybe I just wasn't really that much into animal action figures. But yeah, like although I did love the Beast Wars cartoon itself, I didn't actually collect any of the toys for it. And then when they went back to robots and cars with the Unicron trilogy, that kind of passed me by. I tried to get into Transformers Armada, but I didn't really like that show. I think the action was turned way too low, and like the kids got too much focus. I've often said that Sonic X often suffered from Transformers Armada syndrome, wherein the main characters have their focus lost, so that we could get so we spend way too much time with the children characters. So yeah. And then the other Unicron trilogy shows like Energon and Cybertron, like I actually didn't watch those because well, they weren't, I'm not sure, was it because they weren't on Toonami and they had some like ridiculous 6:30 a.m. time slot that I was never really up for? Like I never really got into them, although I did have a couple of their toys. But it really wasn't until Transformers Animated that I truly got into both a cartoon series that I loved and wanted to collect the toys. And I was already in my early 20s when it was on. So, yeah, like there I am, a really late blooming Transformers toy collector. But Prowl was my favorite heroic character from that show. So, yeah, this is my favorite definitive version of my favorite character from one of the first Transformers cartoon series that I really was all in on the collecting of. So, we've had mixed results with the modern reimaginings of classic cartoon characters, like Override Prime was pretty fantastic, Bulkhead, who is most famous for his round appearance, got squared off. And then you actually heard my dismay of the RC figure. So let's see if Legacy Evolution Prowl does justice to his original animated figure, or if it's another disappointment. And here he is outside the box, and I gotta say, he makes a pretty good first impression. Prowl is looking pretty darn sleek. He has basically everything in the same place that the animated Prowl did, but his proportions are just slightly different, giving him that little bit of flavor of G1, like with the thicker thighs and the slightly more squared and angular look. Like the sleek curves of the animated aesthetic have been given more of a straight, sharp-edged G1 thing, but it doesn't seem to have sacrificed the things that make this motorcycle Prowl's look so unique and great. So let us zoom in on that Ponce, because that's a pretty good looking helmet. He still has that really long chin and pursed mouth that the original toy had, to my recollection. But the head itself is much bigger and more squared off. He has these two big, gigantic flaps on his back, which kind of evoke those samurai flags, because Prowl, he went through cyber ninja training, but he had like a big samurai aesthetic going. He still has his windshield chest, which looks great. The motorcycle seat is still on his back, and it's on a it comes down to make like a butt flap, but it is not attached to the small of his back, so that he still has a bit of waist swivel. That's very good. And he still has that thing with the wheels going right through the middle of his shins that are still able to turn, even though they're there, which is just freaking sorcery. And he has very good feet. So, yeah, great job looking like animated Prowl, but also having a more G1 style aesthetic. His articulation and posability are also fantastic. He has a very expressive ball-jointed neck, which can tilt and can look all the way up. He has universally jointed shoulders, which are pin discs, like real pins. Yeah, gotta love good old pins. He has a bicep swivel. He has an elbow that gets 90 degrees. Now here's something cool. The original Prowl had no hand movement, but this one has like, it's for transformation, but he has that hinge on the inside of his hand. He even still has the same thing going on with his hands, where they're not proper 5mm peg holes. They're just those slits. Like I said, he has a waist joint, universally jointed hips that get a full split. Actually, they can go beyond a split if you want. And they go forward and backward. He can do splits in every direction. There's a thigh swivel, a knee that gets just beyond the 90-degree bend, but then his transformation joint kind of gives him a double-jointed knee. He can even kind of do the thing where, like, there was one episode of the cartoon where he, like, folded his legs up into themselves, so that he like was rolling on his wheels despite still being in robot mode. On the original animated toy did it a little bit better, the way that his legs transformed, but he can still kind of pull that off. And since his feet are back there, and more importantly the fenders from his motorcycle, he can actually stand that way. So if you want to do like wheel kicking Prowl, you could totally do that. That's impressive. Like, I love that. I don't know why anyone ever said anything negative about this toy, because I'm thinking it's pretty freaking fantastic so far. And he has ball-jointed ankles that get a big range, so you can have wide open stances while still staying flat-footed. And oh man, is that really awesome. In also evoking his original toy is his weapon gimmick, as these parts of his hubcaps pop out and become his big old wheel shuriken, which open up in a pretty cool way. Like, you just kind of twist the two halves. Look at that. I twist them, and that's what makes the shuriken come out. They're geared inside. The blade comes out. Yeah. And, of course, you do this on both sides. Not bad at all. And the shuriken handles go into his hand. Oh dear. Wait. Oh, you know, I just noticed his right hand actually is a 5mm port. So he actually has a hard time holding the shuriken in that one. Well, let's see if can I put the 5mm? Yeah, the shuriken fits really nicely in his left hand. He can easily hold the shuriken in his left. So yeah, you got that option. But can he hold this thing in his right hand? Let's see if yeah. Huh. The original Prowl figure, like, the shuriken didn't spin around on both sides like that, so if I can't get him to hold this. Yeah, like, I can kind of wedge it in, but it literally wants to friction itself back out, but I guess there you go. It's a little awkward, but he can hold it. But yeah, that means he can also hold standard 5mm port guns, which is cool. You can have it both ways with this guy. Get a little bit of a hollow spot in his shin because of that, Part of me feels like I would want the shurikens to be on the insides of his calves rather than the outsides, but I think I'm just nitpicking at that point. Still, this is an amazing figure. He looks absolutely fantastic. I love him. Everything about this figure just looks darn fantastic. And his transformation works almost exactly like the original toys did. I keep on feeling tempted to say G1, but animated is not G1. So yeah, I'm not going to do it on camera, but suffice to say, like, you have the thing where this part folds up around his head, his legs collapse into themselves, his waist does that very unique rotate 90-degree thing to become the wheels. It's very evocative, like, of his original animated toy. But there are differences. Like, his head doesn't tuck into his back the way that the original animated toy did, and his handlebars end up here on the top instead of folded up inside of his chest cavity. So there are some differences, but the transformation scheme is still very much preserved. And here is the motorcycle mode. Looking pretty darn snappy. Yeah, got some pretty nice angles from the front. You got the handlebars. Look, the back of his head has the gauges and dials on it, and he even has a little gas cap over a 5mm port. Yeah, I mean, everything comes together pretty good. You got the lights in the right place. Everything is where it's supposed to be. Like, the arms are back here forming the rear of the motorcycle. You have the seat in the middle. You have those big things on his back forming the side panels. His legs fold up in a very similar manner to the original toy. And just like the original toy, it's very difficult to get the stupid thing to stand on its kickstand. I have not been able to successfully get this to happen. But yeah, looking pretty snappy. Looks great. Got the Autobot symbol prominently featured right there in the front of the motorcycle. And the wheels roll pretty well. So, aside from the fact that the kickstand doesn't work, it's actually a pretty good motorcycle. And, as a bonus, boom, original one right here. So he looks a little bit smaller, but yeah, look, the shapes are mostly there. The wheels are a little bit smaller, and it's not quite as pointy and stylized, but most of the stuff still works. I mean, there's some extra details in some places, some details are lacking in other places, but overall, I'd say it's a relatively faithful version of Prowl's animated motorcycle mode. Does a very fine job. It really does. So, yeah. I am actually 100% fully satisfied with how this captures the animated Prowl's look with a little bit more of a G1 squared off aesthetic. 100% I am happy with this. But let's get them back into robot mode for comparison. Okay, now that we have the two of them side by side in robot mode, we can see what a massive difference there was between a deluxe in 2008 and what a deluxe is now. It almost looks like somebody hit him with a shrink ray. If it wasn't for his big back wings, he wouldn't even reach. He doesn't even reach the original Prowl's shoulders. He does, however, have better heels. Like, one problem the original Prowl always had was that he didn't have a lot of heel. So it was sometimes difficult to get the guy to stand straight up. See? But yeah, like you can see what I was talking about earlier, where a lot of the sleek roundness of the original animated figure is replaced by a little bit of added bulk and sharpness in this new version. But you know what? This new version of Prowl with his bulkier helmet and heavier armor really makes me think of Samurai Prowl. I don't know how many of you remember the original Transformers animated cartoon, but in the later part of the series, Prowl would get like a sidecar attachment, which would transform and turn into armor for him. And he did get a later toy that had that sidecar, which admirably transformed in a single piece, no parts forming, which turned into armor that the figure could wear, which included a helmet, bulkier armor up here on his shoulders, hip skirts, and new weapons. and it looked really cool. Let me see if I can Google search an image of that. So yeah, with that Google searched image, like you can see what Samurai Prowl looked like, and like I really think this kind of evokes that. So I was always disappointed back in the day because I never got the Samurai Prowl version of this toy, but now like we actually like this toy kind of evokes that imagery all by itself. So I kind of do have a Samurai Prowl now, and that's great. Oh, and one more thing. G1 red Autobot logo, animated silver Autobot logo. So yeah, that's how you can tell the difference between animated and G1. So in conclusion, after the really sad adaptation that was Prime RC, where they took this really sleek, flexible, agile-looking mold with all of her cool, sharp edges and just really great transformation, and they turned it into this thing, which has ugly kibble, hollowness, an unattractive backpack, which was clearly designed to be a different character before it was RC, and frankly unintuitive and unfun transformation that always makes you feel like I'm gonna break the thing at the waist. I was really nervous finding out that they were continuing with the whole let's G1ify characters from beloved cartoon properties, and but Prowl is one of the ones that makes me feel good about that. Like I said, Override Prime was another one. She was also great, but it's good to see that now we have like we're like getting up there. Now there's two of them. We had Bulkhead and Prowl, which originally started out in animated. Was it Prime or animated Prowl they were adapting? I think it was Prime Prowl they were adapting, but I'm not really sure. But yeah, this looks great. So if you find this guy, pick him up. You will not be disappointed. I don't know if you're a Prowl G1er or a Prowl animator like I am, but this has always been my favorite version of Prowl. And like I said, Prowl was my favorite character in that cartoon, at least, of the heroic characters. So, yeah, maybe, RC is my favorite character overall, but she wasn't my favorite character in animated. But she did have one of my favorite toys from the animated toy line. I wonder if they can do a G1ified version of animated RC. I'd like to see that. But that's for the far future. For now, this is Wake Angel 2001 signing off.